The invasion begins. The Galactic Dominion had ruled the stars for over 1,000 years. No species had ever resisted them. No army had ever stood against their might. And now they had decided to destroy humanity. Supreme Commander Xalzor stood at the bridge of his warship, Eternal Wrath, watching as his massive fleet moved toward the Sol system. 10,000 warships, millions of troops, the full power of the Dominion. Humanity will fall within days, his second-in-command, Admiral Korak, said confidently. They have no fleet, no allies. Their technology is primitive. Xalzor grinned. It won't even be a war. It will be a massacre. As the fleet entered Earth's orbit, they expected to find resistance. There was none. No warships, no planetary defenses, no signals of surrender. Just a silent, dark world beneath them. The Dominion officers exchanged confused glances. Strange, Admiral Korak muttered. Where are their armies? Their leaders? Even the weak fight back when they have no choice. Xalzor narrowed his eyes. Prepare the dropships. We will take this world by force. Within minutes, thousands of Dominion transports descended toward the surface. Millions of soldiers spread across the planet, expecting battle. Instead, they found nothing. The cities were abandoned. The streets were empty. No people, no resistance. Something felt wrong. Commander Exaltar, leading the ground forces, stepped through the ruins of a human metropolis. His scanners detected no life signs. His soldiers spread out, searching the empty buildings. They must be hiding, Selter said. Find them. The Dominion troops moved through the city, their armor gleaming under the cold sun. They kicked down doors, checked underground tunnels, scanned for heat signatures. Nothing. A creeping unease settled over them. Then the first squad vanished. It happened in Sector 12. A group of 20 soldiers entered a human skyscraper. Their transmissions were clear, until, suddenly, they cut off. Zelter's command unit tried to contact them. No response. Another squad was sent to investigate. They, too, vanished. Zelter's mandibles clicked in irritation. Jamming technology, he guessed. Perhaps some primitive trick. He ordered 200 soldiers to sweep the building. They moved in carefully, weapons ready. Their scanners still detected no human presence. But the moment they stepped inside, the doors slammed shut, and the screaming began. Inside the Dominion warship Eternal Wrath, Xalzor watched the reports come in. Entire squads disappearing. Ships losing contact. Something was very wrong. Then, a single distress call crackled through the speakers. Help us. They're in the walls. There. Static. Xalzor's blood ran cold. The humans had not surrendered. They were waiting. And the invasion had just become a nightmare. Panic spread through the Dominion ranks. Supreme Commander Xalzor stood motionless, listening to the desperate distress calls from his soldiers on the surface. Squads disappearing. Ships going silent. This was not how it was supposed to happen. Admiral Korak, Xalzor growled, his voice tight with anger. What is happening down there? Korak hesitated before answering. We don't know, Supreme Commander. Our forces are vanishing. There is no enemy army, no human fleet, no signs of resistance. And yet, we are losing. Xalzor's claws tapped against the control panel. Then send more troops. Korak swallowed. We already did. And they were vanishing too. On the ground, Commander Selter was breathing heavily. His 200-strong unit had entered the human skyscraper just minutes ago. Now, only a handful remained. The halls had been dark, silent. Then, the shadows had moved. Something had ripped through the Dominion soldiers with terrifying speed. One by one, they were dragged away, their screams echoing through the building. The walls were marked with blood, strange symbols painted across them. Zeltar had seen many battlefields before, but this wasn't war. This was a massacre. "We have to get out of here," one of his soldiers whispered. Zelter nodded. "Regroup outside." They sprinted toward the exit. The doors were gone. The entire structure had changed, as if the building itself was alive. Then the whispers began. Not in their language. Not in human speech. Something else. Something ancient. Zelter raised his weapon, his eyes darting around the shadows. "Who's there?" he barked. No response. Then a voice, cold and terrifying, spoke from the darkness. "You shouldn't have come." In orbit, Zalzor slammed his fist against the console. "Get me a direct link to the ground forces." A static-filled transmission came through. Then a single image appeared on the screen. It was one of his soldiers, or what was left of him. His armor was torn apart, his body held up by something unseen. His mandibles twitched in pain, his eyes filled with terror. And then a human stepped into view. A man, dressed in dark armor, his face hidden by a mask. He tilted his head, studying the dying Dominion warrior like a predator watching its prey. Then he spoke. "You thought we were weak." The human raised a knife. The screen went black. On the bridge of eternal wrath, silence filled the air. For the first time in his long career, Supreme Commander Xalzor felt fear. This was not war. This was a hunt. And his army was the prey. The Dominion invasion force had landed with millions of soldiers. Their fleet hovered in orbit, 10,000 warships strong. They had expected an easy victory. Now, they were disappearing. Supreme Commander Xalzor paced the bridge of eternal wrath, his claws scraping against the floor. "How many have we lost?" he demanded. Admiral Korek's face was grim. "Over 500,000 ground troops are missing. Hundreds of ships have gone silent. We still can't detect any human military presence." Xalzor clenched his fists. "Then who is killing them?" Korak hesitated. Then he played an intercepted audio transmission. Static crackled. A Dominion soldier's panicked voice broke through. "They see everything. They know where we are before we move. We're not fighting an army. We're fighting ghosts." Then screaming. Then silence. Xalzor's blood ran cold. On the ground, Commander Xelter and his surviving soldiers ran through the ruins of the human city. His squad had been 200 strong. Now only 6 remained. They weren't being attacked by an army. They were being hunted. Xelter's claws gripped his plasma rifle as he scanned the dark streets. The humans were invisible to sensors. They'd moved like shadows. They struck from nowhere. Something rustled in the debris. One of his soldiers turned. I think I heard Summith. A blade tore through his throat. He collapsed, choking on his own blood. The Dominion troops opened fire, spraying plasma into the darkness. But there was no target, only shadows, only whispers. Then a voice came from the blackness. "Run." Xelter did. In orbit, on the command deck of Eternal Wrath, Xalzor's mind raced. How could this be happening? They had scanned the planet. No human fleet. No major defenses. No armies. And yet, his forces were being wiped out. Korak's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Supreme Commander, the fleet is under attack." Xalzor turned sharply. "By what?" "There is no human navy." Korak pointed at the tactical display. Dominion warships were vanishing from the grid. Not destroyed. Not retreating. Just gone. Aboard the Dominion battleship Void Reaver, Captain Veclor stared at his screen in horror. Its ship was drifting, systems disabled, crew trapped. Something had overridden their controls. Through the main viewport, he saw the wreckage of other Dominion ships, torn apart as if by an invisible force. Then the lights flickered. A transmission came through. It was a human, a soldier in black armor, helmet concealing his face. His voice was calm. "We let you land. We let you spread across our world. Because we wanted you to feel safe. Now your fleet dies in the dark." Veclor barely had time to scream before his ship was torn apart from the inside. On eternal wrath, Zalzor staggered back from the monitor, his mind racing. This was not a war. This was a carefully planned execution. The humans had lured them in. And now, they were destroying them piece by piece. For the first time in Dominion history, the hunters had become the hunted. The once invincible Dominion fleet was crumbling. 10,000 warships had arrived in Sol's orbit. Now thousands were gone, not in battle, not destroyed in a fair fight, but erased as if they had never existed. Supreme Commander Xalzor stood on the bridge of eternal wrath, staring at the carnage. His claws dug into the armrest of his throne. This wasn't possible. There had been no planetary defenses, no human war fleet. And yet, "We let you land." The human's words echoed in his mind, "Because we wanted you to feel safe." Now, Xalzor understood. They had walked into a trap. On the ground, Commander Xelter and his remaining soldiers sprinted through the ruins. Every shadow felt alive. Every breath felt like his last. His 200-strong unit had been slaughtered. Now, only 3 remained. The others hadn't been killed in battle. They had been taken, and no one ever saw them again. Xelter's mandibles clicked rapidly as he turned a corner. Then, he stopped. A single human stood in his path. A man in dark armor, his helmet hiding his face, no weapon in his hands. Yet Xelter felt pure terror. "Who? What are you?" Xeltar whispered. The human tilted his head. "You came to conquer." He took a step forward. "But we are the apex predators of this world." Another step. "And now, you are prey." Xelter raised his rifle. His claws trembled. Then, darkness. In orbit. Admiral Korek's voice shook. "Supreme Commander, the enemy is inside our ships." Xalzor turned, his eyes narrowing. "Impossible. No human ship breached our defenses." Korek's mandibles twitched. They didn't need ships. Xalzor looked at the security feeds. The Dominion warships were supposed to be impenetrable. No enemy had ever boarded them. Now, they were burning. Security teams gunned down by unseen attackers. Bulkheads breached. Entire sections falling silent. The humans had come aboard. Not as prisoners, not as diplomats, but as hunters. On the battleship Doomfang, Captain Ralcor gripped his command chair. "Where is the enemy?" His officers had no answer. Then the lights flickered, and the screaming began. On eternal wrath, Xalzor felt something he had never known. True, pure fear. For 1,000 years, the Dominion had ruled the galaxy. For the first time, they had met an enemy that didn't just want to win. Humanity wanted revenge, and they were taking it. One ship, one soldier, one kill at a time. The Dominion fleet was dying. Their 10,000 warships had once blotted out the stars above Earth. Now the void was filled with wreckage, drifting bodies, and fire. Supreme Commander Xalzor stood frozen on the bridge of eternal wrath. His claws trembled against the armrest of his throne. His mind refused to accept what he was seeing. Entire battle groups, gone. Ships weren't exploding in battle. They were falling silent, one by one, as if the enemy was inside them. On the battleship Doomfang, Captain Ralcor clutched his plasma pistol. The screams of his crew echoed through the halls. His ship's hull was intact. No boarding pods, no breaches, no alarms. Yet, his soldiers were dying. The security cameras showed nothing. Then, static. Then, a voice. "You thought we would fight your way." Ralcor turned. A human stood at the entrance of the bridge, clad in dark armor, helmet obscuring his face. Ralcor's mandibles clicked in terror. "You can't be here." "The ship is." The human moved, faster than anything Ralcor had ever seen. Then, pain. Then, darkness. On the ground, Commander Excelter was running. The once mighty Dominion ground forces had been reduced to scattered, terrified survivors. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were prey. Zelter and his last remaining warriors sprinted through the ruined human city. Something was chasing them. Not tanks, not drones, not mechs. Something worse. One of his soldiers suddenly screamed and vanished into the shadows. Zeltar didn't look back. He ran until his lungs burned, his legs aching. Then, a wall of fire erupted ahead. Humans stood in the flames, weapons raised, faces masked. Zelter fell to his knees. For the first time in his life, he knew what it meant to be helpless. One of the humans stepped forward. Your kind burned our cities. A second stepped up, slaughtered our people. A third. Now, it's your turn. Zelter closed his eyes. The gunfire was deafening. In orbit, on the bridge of eternal wrath, Zalzor staggered back. His fleet was gone. His armies were dead. The humans had won. No, they had hunted them, destroyed them piece by piece. His communications officer turned. Supreme Commander, he whispered. Incoming transmission. A human appeared on the screen. The same one from before. Dark armor, hidden face, cold voice. Your forces are broken. Your fleet is ashes. You thought this was war. The human leaned forward. No, this was justice. Then, the transmission cut off, and the ship's alarms screamed. The humans were coming for him. The once mighty Dominion fleet had been reduced to ruins. Thousands of warships now drifted as lifeless husks, their crews either dead or missing. On the ground, the Dominion's once unstoppable armies had been hunted to extinction. Only one ship remained untouched, the flagship of the Dominion, the Eternal Wrath. And now, the humans were coming for it. On the bridge, Supreme Commander Xalzor's mandibles clicked in fear and rage. His claws dug into his throne as he watched the chaos unfold. The security feeds flickered with static. His elite guards were disappearing one by one. No alarms, no explosions, just silence. Xalzor turned to his remaining officers. Seal the command deck. Activate all defenses. The ship's ad voice responded instead. Unable to comply. Xalzor's eyes widened. He looked at his officers. They were motionless. A chill ran through him. Then he saw it. A thin red laser dot on his tactical officer's forehead. Then, a single shot. The officer collapsed, a perfect hole between his eyes. The other officers scrambled for weapons, but more shots rang out. Each Dominion officer dropped with a single precise bullet. Xalzor grabbed his plasma pistol, heart pounding. He was the last one standing. A human voice crackled through the speakers. No more orders, Supreme Commander. No more armies. No more fleets. Just you. Then, the lights went out. In the shadows, Xalzor stood alone in the dark. His claws tightened around his pistol. His breathing was ragged. He had fought in 100 wars. He had never lost. Until now. A whisper echoed from the darkness. Tell me, Supreme Commander, what does it feel like to be prey? Xalzor spun, firing wildly. Plasma bolts lit up the room. Nothing. Only shadows. Only silence. Then, a hand grabbed his throat. A human soldier materialized before him, clad in black armor. His helmet's visor glowed blood red. Xalzor struggled, but the human's grip was unbreakable. The soldier ripped the plasma pistol from his claws and tossed it aside. Then he leaned in. You invaded our home. You slaughtered our people. Now, we return the favor. Xalzor's mandibles twitched. I surrender. The human tilted his head. We don't accept surrender. Then, a single gunshot. In orbit, the Eternal Wrath floated silently. Its commander was dead. Its crew was gone. Human forces took control, overriding its systems. One final transmission was sent across the galaxy. A warning, a threat, a promise. This is humanity. To those who come in peace, we welcome you. To those who come in war, you will not leave alive. The Dominion had tried to conquer Earth. Now, humanity was coming for the Dominion. The war should have ended. The Dominion's greatest fleet had been shattered. The Supreme Commander was dead. The Eternal Wrath, their flagship, now belonged to humanity. But humanity wasn't finished. They remembered the burning cities, the millions dead, the betrayal. Now, it was humanity's turn to strike. The message. Across the galaxy, Dominion leaders gathered in secret. High Chancellor Vokrath, the new leader, stood before his trembling advisors. "How did we lose?" he hissed. They were primitives. No one answered. But the answer was clear. The Dominion had made a fatal mistake. They had thought humanity was weak. They had thought wrong. A warning message echoed through every Dominion world. From the stolen Eternal Wrath, a human voice spoke. To the Dominion, you came to destroy us. You failed. Now we come for you. Run. Hide. It won't matter. Humanity is coming. The counterattack begins. The first Dominion world fell in a single night. A fleet of black warships, ships unlike anything seen before, appeared over the skies of Saldor Prime. The Dominion's defenses activated immediately. Then, they went silent. No alarms, no battles, just darkness. Then, they arrived. Not an army, not a fleet. Hunters. They slipped through the cities like ghosts. They took down military leaders. They erased communication centers. By sunrise, Saldor Prime's government was gone. The people woke up as prisoners. The Dominion falls. One by one, Dominion worlds fell. Not through massive battles. Not through planetary invasions. Through fear. No Dominion officer was safe. No general could sleep without looking over his shoulder. No fleet could launch before its ships were disabled from within. Humanity was no longer fighting a war. They were hunting. The same way the Dominion had hunted them. Now, the mighty rulers of the galaxy were running. They fled to the farthest stars. They abandoned their thrones. They hid in the dark. But it didn't matter. Humanity always found them. One by one, until there was nothing left. The final message. From the bridge of the Eternal Wrath, now fully under human control, the last message was sent. This is humanity. We do not seek war. But if you come for us, we will find you. We will break you. We will end you. Across the galaxy, a new legend was born. Not of conquerors, not of oppressors, but of hunters. The Galactic Council had betrayed humanity. Now, humanity ruled the stars, and no one would dare challenge them again.